should I keep moving forward, or are you back?
I'm back.
All right.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you. Just trying to get this thing to work. They changed the look of the thing. You can be our friend at Facebook. We're known as Firestorm Solutions. On Twitter, we're known as Firestorm Soul. And we do want you to follow. There's a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communications, crisis public relations, and the consequence management. Our attorneys want to remind you that the presentation is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. And this information should be discussed in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. The Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce has been our sponsor for several years here, and we're pleased also to have the Eastern Great Lakes chapter of the Association of Contingency Planners as our host and sponsor. I don't believe that Dr. Michael Lerner is with us today. She's probably out doing other things, but Michael is a great supporter of Firestorm and these webinars. We also like to support the Association of Contingency Planners because they have great programs, both for members and non-members. So do feel free to contact them. Our webinar today is being presented by Karen Masullo. Karen is the Chief Intelligence Officer and Executive Vice President of Firestorm. Karen has extensive experience in social media and tools to follow and monitor social media. She's also done extensive training of other organizations in the use of social media and other things. So without further ado, over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I appreciate your joining us today. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about monitoring social and traditional media. You can at any time visit our website at firestorm.com. We've also added a couple of new features. Don't see it in this screenshot, but we just added a very interesting video feature. Firestorm has been partnering with a print publication based around the insurance industry for any small or medium-sized business, some really interesting topics in the insurance research letter. And the insurance research letter has taken some key articles from our senior executive team, from Jim Satterfield and Harry Rulin, Susie Laughlin, myself, and turned them into some really interesting talking articles with great video background. So please do visit firestorm.com and you'll see that. And then, of course, under resources, you can find briefs, previous webinars. We have some interesting blog articles this week, last week. So we do look forward to seeing you there. And when we talk about monitoring, we have a lot of resources on the site as well. But I think it's a really it gets to be a vague term for people. I think it's confusing, especially for small businesses. Small businesses, you wear, 50 different hats when you sit at your desk every day. And while it would be wonderful to have a tool that allowed you to hear every nuance of speech that goes along in your industry or at your specific company, we simply don't have the time to do that. So, about, 6 years ago or so, when, especially right after 2008, when Twitter really exploded and Facebook became a much more trafficked tool, some companies came out with some really interesting tools to assist you measure your voice in the marketplace based on social interaction. And that was good. And those tools were really embraced and used by marketers. And Hootsuite is one of those companies. Hootsuite has about 10 million clients, from individuals to multinational enterprise-level organizations. And again, those tools were designed for marketers. And we looked at those tools about 5 years ago when Jim Satterfield and I were talking about really understanding risk and how we could leverage social and traditional media in order to help our clients predict, plan, and perform when it comes to risk. And so we started using some tools. We looked for best-of-class tools and settled on 2, although we supplement those with others as need be. And one of the tools that we purchased is a very powerful tool, and it was purchased a year into our relationship by the folks at Hootsuite. So we felt really good about that because we picked something that Hootsuite picked as well, but also it meant that Hootsuite was going to start putting development and effort into the tool. And so we feel really great about that and have had since then a really great relationship and watched the tool develop, because there is a difference between monitoring for marketing and monitoring for threats or behaviors of concern. So that sort of sets up where we are today. So first, I want you to think about what threats worry you. If you're sitting in a room right now with some other people, it's a good time to have a little conversation. Just, say a word or use the chat function on GoToWebinar and just put some things down that worry you. It could be a fire. It could be the loss of intellectual capital from internal sabotage. It could be theft, and it could be an incident of workplace violence. There are many threats that keep you up at night because you are leaders in the business community and all of the responsibility falls on your shoulders. Over the year, we ask you questions when you register for a webinar, and we've had events where we've had more than 1,000, not individuals, but companies participate. And in one of those, we surveyed 948 business professionals, and we asked them what they were concerned about, and if they were concerned about violence in the workplace. And almost half said they were concerned. 49.7% or 0.8% said yes, they were concerned. And out of that, 38% said they were very concerned. And so I think it's important that we understand, rather than sit around and wait for violence to visit our parking lot or our workplace, there are things that we can do to keep our eyes open, to be prepared, because almost every disaster or incident of violence or an act of terrorism was preceded by warning signals. Certainly, when we armchair quarterback that the next morning, everything's clear to us. But we are getting much better as business professionals, as business continuity professionals, as risk management professionals, as security professionals, in identifying what might be a potential behavior of concern or warning signal. You know, in the image you see in front of you now, we hear these same comments after every incident that we handle on behalf of a client. I knew something was going to happen. He was such a nice guy, I don't understand. Actually, you should have seen the things he posted on social media. They were really scary. I don't know, something just wasn't quite right about him. And I reported it, but no one did anything. And that's a scary thing for you to know that you reported something and it was disregarded. And for those of you that have joined us throughout the year for the other 10 sessions that we've done, and will join us in December for Jim Satterfield's wrap-up of the year, Jim has been talking to you over the year about something called BRSA, a Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment that Firestorm has created. Susie Laughlin, one of our founders, is dedicated to assuring that that gun never makes it, or the weapon never makes it to the facility. So Firestorm has come up with something called the Behavioral Risk Threat Assessment after years of research and development and study. We think of it as Alice's big sister. And one of the parts and pieces of that is the ability to report information into a central location so that when someone does report something, we don't have a situation where no one does anything. So let's look at a hypothetical situation. We're going to call him Fred. And if we could just stop one bit of violence going on, wouldn't that be worth it? So what's going on with Fred? Recently, Fred has been receiving, I'm sorry, Bill, was that you? If you could mute, that would be awesome. Thank you. Fred has been receiving poor performance reviews. He's not happy. He's been walking around with a cloud over his head. He has an argument with coworkers or others. It's been noted in a log somewhere. Coworkers are reporting that he has been upset and said things like, "You guys will be sorry." His absenteeism rate is increasing. He's constantly calling in sick or just doesn't show up at all. He also leaves early. His friends hear him talking crazy, but, you know, they don't want to be the rep. They don't want to be involved. And he started making really questionable posts on social media, rants and complaining about being mistreated. All right, who's in charge of this? Who's responsible for all these disparate pieces of information coming in? Where do they go? Who can see this information? What's the workflow that allows this information to flow into a place where not one or various people see it at different times, but where a team, a behavioral threat assessment team, can see it and understand exactly the action that they are to take? Do these disparate systems talk to each other at all? If there's an incident in the parking lot that security logs in their security log on whatever security log software that they use, will you ever see that? Will your human resource person ever see that? Or does it just go into that black hole of data and information that's gathered and collected? Is key information missed because of this? Our goal is to help you through predictive, actionable intelligence create not only a central repository for all of this information, but consider all of the different types of information you need, predict the workflow that we need, plan and perform and train on it so that we can connect the dots and keep that weapon from ever coming in to your facility, to your parking lot. So we take 4 key steps to make this happen. The first, you have to assess risk. For everyone on this call, everyone who is a member of the Rochester Chamber or the Association of Contingency Planners, please reach out to webinars@firestorm.com and say, I would like to schedule my no-fee risk assessment. We're going to do a really high-level no-fee risk assessment. It's going to help us, takes about an hour, we have a great conversation, and it's going to give us a really great view into what are some advised next steps that you can take to help your organization. And it's not going to cost you anything. As Jim Satterfield says, it's our best price. So this, what we really want to do is first do this high-level piece, and then later you can start putting in the other pieces of your program. We can look at what you've already done and understand how we can help you take appropriate next steps. We have seen almost on a weekly basis, I can look for employee wounded or employee shot, and I can see almost once a week an incident of workplace violence, a disgruntled former employee, a disgruntled customer or client, domestic violence spilling over into the workplace. alcohol abuse that spills over into the workplace. So we need to look at all of these parts and pieces for your organization. Then we look at trend monitoring. It's important that we also understand what are the violence incidences that, and they do trend, that are going on inside and outside of your organization. I don't know if you recall a few years ago when people started doing the drug bath salts. And bath salts created a psychotic break that created incidences of cannibalism both in and near workplaces and on college campuses. Firestorm actually handled one of those situations. And so we understand what's going on in the country, in the world, in your specific region when we work with you, so that we can help you better prepare for your regional and geographic risks, which may be different from someone else in a different region or geography. We surveyed more than 250 webinar participants in one session, and we asked them if their organization had a documented and trained program to identify behaviors of concern. What we learned was that 37% did have a program. We had something, or something that people thought was what we were talking about, but they didn't remember exactly what it was or where it was. 40% didn't have anything at all in place. And the remaining participants were just confused or unsure. We think we have it. We think we got training on it. We did get training on it, but it was like a year and a half ago, and I don't really remember. So we've got to do a better job of making sure that we have a program in place to identify behaviors of concern. Part of that is what we're going to be talking about today, which is monitoring. And this is how monitoring has evolved in order to address these types of concerns. And give me just one second. My computer has decided it's not going to change slides, but it just did. The last part of this then is we need to understand who's really in your building. And I think we've seen, sadly, too many times where situations occur where once a story has broken, we find out that there was no pre-employment screening. And in a tight workforce, when you need to fill positions, you just need people in the building. You need people to do a job. There are things in small organizations, especially, where there's a great deal of effort taken in order to do the pre-screening and resources. It can be a challenge. So we'd like to help you with that. We'd like to help you find best practices in this regard. You know, there's a company that we've done just a little bit of work with, pre-work with on the East Coast, and they went from having about 25 employees to more than 4,000 almost overnight. They exploded in the marketplace and suddenly had 4 or 5 warehousing facilities, manufacturing facilities across the country, and had to employ up. They had to scale up so quickly that in the geographic areas where they were locating their warehouses, they were actually hiring in a labor force that was already at war with each other. They had significant gang activity ongoing within their facilities, and it spilled into their parking lots and eventually into the facilities themselves. And again, when you see that sort of pressure point happening in your organization, that's when you need to get a consulting firm in to help you predict, plan, and perform, so that when you do scale up, because we want you to be successful, you don't have these sorts of issues occur. And it's not just about violence that can occur. If we're not screening correctly, if we don't have the right safeguards in place, if we're growing faster than we realize, theft, and theft of both physical and intellectual property is a significant issue. 32% of cases involved projected losses were in excess of $500,000. And over 19% of losses that were noted by Hiscox's embezzlement watch list, which is one of the best sources, was 1 million or more. So you, right now, you sitting at your desk, could you afford to lose $1 million? Could you afford to help your company lose $1 million today? I don't think so. Last is what we're talking about today, the evolution of social and traditional media, or open source media. It's freely accessible. We're not doing anything covert to get it. All we're doing for you is using our expertise over the past few years of how people talk when they are moving into threatening behavior, and aggregating all of the chatter or that huge pipeline of information and narrowing it down so that you can make sense of the data. The last thing I want anyone listening in on this call to do today is to spend 8 or 10 hours a day looking at 30,000 different pieces of information, because that's what we do. So you don't have to. And then what we do is we filter out those that are not relevant to your business industry, your geography. And when we see something that is a threat, we then take some other steps to help you avoid risk of harm, any legal risk compliance. You know, if we have pictures of your employees licking pizza before they put it in the box, we're going to tell you. Any operating risk or reputation risk, I cannot tell you how often people are doing really risky things on the roof of your building. And those risky things are exactly what you're imagining them to be right now. So we use predictive intelligence, and the earlier a problem is detected, we know the less impact it will have on your organization. Jim Satterfield was working with a company last year, and there was a threat against the company. And that's something else that we need to look at. We need to look at the principals in your firm or in your organization, your CEO, your president. And while we were assuring that the individual that was being targeted was safe, and we were able to identify, even though the post was anonymous, we were able to pinpoint who we thought made the post, and actually were able to do that by the association of their friends, who their girlfriend was, and we're able to narrow it down to a block in the neighborhood, and the police showed up. We knew the police showed up because the person, of course, posted that on social media. But while we were doing that, we also found out that the manager of the facility was allowing employees to bribe her for better shifts with drugs. And we thought that was a behavior of concern that ought to be addressed as well. So what we find is really interesting, and hopefully our insight can really help you avoid those things happen in your facility. Now I want to talk to you just really quickly about something called geospoofing, and this is important, and you'll understand why as we talk a bit more. What you're seeing in front of you right now, I hope, is a visual representation of what I see when I am looking from a geo perspective using one of the tools that we use on top of a facility, and I asked it to show me just Instagram and Twitter posts. That's all I wanted to see, that it happened in a specific period of time. There was a whole lot of posting going on, and we look at every single one. We can look at these visually or as a list, but when I look at these visually through the geolocation, I'm saying just show me people who have their geolocation turned on. Now, the reason that this is important is because contained in these messages is a threat, and it's a threat to cause harm on a campus. And that threat actually occurred 100 miles away. But the perpetrator of the threat, a man named Hunter Park, bragged on another social website called Reddit that they had spoofed their GPS geolocation service and were trolling the application Yik Yak on a college campus. And they were having a blast. They were creating all kinds of mayhem, and people at the University of Missouri, where they were targeting, were really very frightened, because this was, Missouri has had a lot of civil unrest, and people were really afraid. This is what a fake GPS location spoofer looks like. There are hundreds of these on the Android store and the App Store. And so it's important to understand for our team, when we see, I'm going to stand my ground tomorrow and shoot every black person I see, we need to have set up a communication protocol with you, with your company, or your campus, as the case may be, and have the escalation protocol as such that we are instantly moving forward on resolving, investigating, and figuring out where something like this comes from. Because if you can spoof to appear at a location, you can spoof to appear elsewhere when you are at the location. And that's something that we have to take into consideration. And the reason I bring this up is because people will approach you and say, we only do geolocation, that's all you need to worry about. It's not, because it can be tricked. Our team of trained analysts, when it comes to your account or when we're working with a client, we look at every single message that we've gathered in our net that applies to your organization. We have one organization that the name of their organization is also the name of a really popular Japanese anime character. So when we first started looking at that, we had 2 million results in a 24-hour period. So the next step we take is we understand how to narrowly carve out those irrelevant terms. We understand how to exclude those. So what we're giving you is as close to real time, real feed as we can. Now, can we catch everything? No, no one can. But we've been doing this for a long time, so we really understand how to catch those things that are important to you. Now, I want you to think about this. Think about this following statement. Now, this was in relationship to a school, but it could be in relationship to any business, any organization, anywhere. And many of you sell to schools, so it's important that we think about this. When are we going to stop taking these threats seriously? Do we really think the bad guys are going to tell the authorities their plan before it happens? Well, my answer to that is yes. In almost every situation of violence that we've seen, with very few exceptions, we have seen the threat on either that cloudy, dark part of the web, on 4chan, or some of those more distasteful websites, or we see it straight up on Facebook and Twitter. Elliot Rodger posted video after video on YouTube, and I've watched all of them to understand his thought processes and his mentality. So how do we go about finding threats? I have some people, they're called analysts, and we work very hard through what we call our ACT approach. And ACT stands for awareness, context, and then the application of tools and training. So awareness, this goes both ways, right? We're worried about people bringing a weapon to work, but what happens when that weapon does enter the workplace? And as in the case of the Charlotte Pizza Hut, an employee actually shot and killed an attempted robber. Well, what I was reading yesterday or the day before, was that the mother of the person shot was saying, what is that guy doing with a gun in the Pizza Hut? And there's litigation ensuing from that. Down at the bottom, there's one that says, take my gun to work, sad case, but it's me or him. You know the rest. Well, I had to dig it further into that. We have a responsibility when we see something, whether you're a client of ours or not, we're going to let you know if we've seen a threat. And it turns out those are two seniors in high school having a beef with each other. They work at a fast food restaurant. It was very easy to figure it out and establish because the person posted a picture of themselves on their Twitter stream in their uniform. For us, it just takes a matter, sometimes within 15 minutes, we can figure out what's going on, who's being affected, and what we need to do. Here's something else that was posted. This was on 4chan. If you don't know what 4chan is, don't go. But that's where we see, as vile as you can be, people will encourage you to be more vile on 4chan. That's what 4chan is. So they were talking about jobs in retail. Somebody said, I hated produce. It killed my body and soul. I switched over to cashier, and it's okay. I'm still going to be in retail forever. One day I'm going to take a gun to work and shoot myself in front of the first expletive customer I encounter so they have my blood on their hands forever. That is someone who's in trouble. Context. When we see a message, there are some things we have to really quickly establish as a team. And one of those is it real? There was something about this, and almost every message we see, the first thing we do before we escalate it, before we dig into the account, is we run a cross-check on the content. And it turns out that these are the lyrics to a song called School by an up-and-coming rapper. I'm taking my gun to school. Yesterday they tried to jump me are the lyrics to a song. 2 years ago there was a band called Amur. Well, there still is a band called Amur. And they wrote a song called I'm Taking a Gun to School. So we have to put that in context so that we understand. Is it still a threat? Yeah, maybe. But we need to also understand where the language came from. Then we apply the tools and the training that we have to this. And we look up a phrase. We look up a threat. And this is just a dashboard view of what you might see if you were working with us within your own application. We can see that it was mentioned, this phrase, 264 times on Twitter, on different discussion boards, RSS feeds, which are custom feeds that I create based on a needs assessment that I have with you, and then we pull in local blogs, local newspapers, Patch, all kinds of different things, plus major media. And then you'll see also we picked up 10 mentions on Reddit. Reddit is, well, it calls itself the front page of the web. So if you don't know what Reddit is a very interesting place, and it is where some very interesting people on the web live. We also have sentiment trends, and one of the things that we do that I think is important is we're not just looking for someone saying, I'm going to bring my gun to work tomorrow. There are things that we also include when we do an original assessment with you and set up how we're going to work with you, the number of streams of words that we're going to look for. In the image on the left, this person was upset with a debt collection company that kept calling him. So he posted the company's CEO's home, phone number, and address on Twitter. So we search for those things. We don't just search for your CEO's name, because your CEO's name might be John Smith. We may set up a search for their address. We may set up a search that also includes their phone number, their private number, their email, so that if suddenly someone leaks that out, we're going to be able to let you know. And that's important information. Now, the one on the right is kind of funny, and the one below, well, it's not funny. It wasn't funny for T-Mobile's CEO, who really made himself look foolish. And that's something else we look for. Your executive team may do some things that hurt your brand and reputation and could create a violent episode as well. But T-Mobile's CEO didn't know what EFF was when he went on a video rant about something. And EFF is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and they are a very well-organized vocal group who say their mission is to work to ensure that the Internet stays open and free, legal, and that users are in control of their data and their information. For the T-Mobile CEO to not know who they were was really sort of unforgivable. And so we also let you know so that you can alert your marketing people. You're going to be getting a call from the meeting in about 2 minutes, and you don't have to respond, but this is what just happened on social media. You know, one of the things people ask me is, how do you tell the difference then between, you know, what's a real threat and what is a behavior of concern, something that we need to keep our eye on? Well, real threatening behavior is very clear. You know, if somebody's bullying in the workplace, somebody comes up to you and pushes you on the shoulder and say, you just wait till tomorrow, I'm going to kick your butt in the parking lot. That's kind of a threat. That's bullying. Cyberbullying, it's very clear. There's very clear language. Fights actually occur. Someone is being stalked. Two coworkers might date and there's actually violence involved. There are threats that are witnessed, recorded, or conditional threats are made. If I don't get these days off, I'm going to blow up, you know, the back of the building. And there is the threat, the sense of, or you get word that there are weapons coming into the workplace. Behaviors of concern aren't always so clear, and that's why we talk about making sure that when we first sit down with a client, we create a workflow so that when the information that we're gathering on our side goes into a central repository with the information that you gather within your organization, so that, again, we don't have an incident that happens on the manufacturing floor that no one ever sees but security or that shift manager. And these range from anything from consistently blaming others and saying the world is responsible for all of their problems, grievances that are filed again and again, to veiled or indirect threats that can be made personally or via social media. And when we look at social media and some of the imagery and the messages, we're looking for angry, threatening statements, manifestos, diatribes that are made. Now, this doesn't indicate that someone is going to become violent, but it's a piece of information that should be used in order to help us assess the employee. Roxanne, the Wonder Dog, has just joined me, and if you hear her crying in the background, it is because she would like to talk as well. So I want to ask you a question before we close today, and that is, do you know right now in your organization, do you currently use any external intelligence application to identify potential threats? In the past, when we've asked this, it's been pretty much a 30-30-30 split. No is usually, you know, we don't have anything at all. Yes, we do use something to monitor. Don't know what it is, but we know it's out there. And then a whole group of people that just don't know at all. I don't know if we do anything at all. So if you have 30% of your employees don't know if you do anything at all, and they see a threat, they see something that happens on social media within the workplace, what do you think they're doing with that information? They're not doing anything with it. It's just one of those things where, I guess somebody else will report it. And that's the worst thing that can happen in your organization, is a culture of, I guess someone else has already taken care of this. We want you to move your organization from a maturity point of view of where everything is a complete surprise into a place where at least you're reacting in a positive way. We don't want you to be reactive, but it's better than being surprised constantly. To one where you're supportive of your workforce and you're in a pre-action mode. To one where you completely, every day, are strategic and predict, plan, and perform what your workforce will be doing. Please remember, the greatest obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. And with that, I'd like to remind you that you can download a brief of this session on our website. Usually it's ready within about 2 days of the session. You can download a copy of the webinar from our YouTube channel. And Michael did join us. And so, Michael, I'd like to give this last couple of minutes to you, if you're able to, and have you say just a couple of words to your constituency. And Michael, are you still there?
Sorry, I was muted.
Well, I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very interesting. You know, I've worked for companies where we had employees that were showing signs, and I think I've maybe mentioned this in past calls, and we went through and we actually followed up on one of the women, and as I was firing her, you know, she took a blow at me. We had to call security and such, and we went through and we actually found out that she was quite disgruntled and had, you know, a number of plans. So noticing the signs are so critical, and, you know, especially on today with the, as you said about Facebook and such, you know, people, you don't even have to spoof using the technology that's out there. People simply go into Facebook and says, put a different location, and people think they're on vacation and they're not even there. So it's a whole nother process that people aren't aware of. And a little bit about the Association Continuity Professionals. They changed their name. It's now Association Continuity Professionals, because we really have a lot of cybersecurity areas, which is the big main area that I work in: cybersecurity, business continuity, disaster recovery, auditors. So it's changed a lot, and I would love to invite everybody on the call to come to one of our meetings. If they choose not to come as a member, which is only $100 a year for everything, including your webinars, if they choose not to come as they can come as a guest to any one of our events for $30. And our next event is going to be on how to deal with the press during a crisis situation. So that's going to be on Wednesday the 16th, and it's going to be in Rochester at the EFPR location. If someone's interested, they can call me directly at 917-882-5453, 917-882-5453. And thank you so much for a very wonderful webinar. Did a great job. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you everyone who has attended. As I mentioned, a recording will be up on YouTube very shortly, and you can find a brief within 48 hours or so on our website at firestorm.com. Thank you, everyone. This will end today's session, and have a great day.
Thank you.